So this video is going to be looking at presets and edit. So while I work through the video, what I'm going to ask you guys to do as well is to be working with me. So I'll have these photos available for you, or you can be working on your own images, do not mind. And what you'll be able to do is watch what I'm doing, pause the video, and then have a go at yourself. So that's where we want to be working. First thing we're going to look at is presets. So that's this button here, and it comes up with recommended, premium, and yours. Yours is if you've already saved one, so I had done that earlier. Premium, this is coming up with auto sort of presets. What that does effectively, so if we go to recommended, what's happening here, just excuse the bell. They work almost similar to like a lot of filters. So if you've used basic sort of editing before, or if you've like an Instagram filter, this is effectively what these presets do. So you've got all of these sort of built in there. So for example, I can go through and have a look at these different ones, and they will make adjustments. So for example, this cinematic one. And what you can then see here is it makes adjustments here in the editing. What recommended does, it scans the image, and using sort of AI, it then gives a bunch of suggestions about what might suit this image. I wouldn't necessarily say all of them are going to be very good examples of this, but what you might want to do is, this might be a way of scrolling through to get you thinking about what might you want this image to look like, or just acting as suggestions for our image here. So we'll scroll through. You can then filter that. So for example, if you just want black and white images, your series that you wanted to be working with is just black and white, you can then scroll through that by filtering. You can also go to premium, and then you can also go and find that yourself. So for example, if I go to style futuristic, and again, it's just going to give suggestions. Why don't I lean into that, because it's bringing out that sort of bluey green sort of jade color in our dragon here from Chinatown. What we can then do here is we can adjust the amount of that filter and the strength of that in different ways. What I would like to do now is I'm going to undo this. So I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to scroll down on the image and click reset edits in one photo. So bringing back to edit, what we can then do here is we can adjust things manually. So we can adjust the exposure, the amount of light, contrast, high contrast to low contrast, shadows, the amount of white, all these very basic ones. So we've got light, color, so you're going to adjust temperature. We might lean warmer, a tint, it's a bit too green, so we might bring that magenta a little bit back in. Vibrance, and then saturation as well. I often find that I'd lean into more vibrance and saturation because it's a more subtle, while saturation can be almost like bringing a sledgehammer to your photo editing as well. What I would suggest might be a starting point is, if you wanted to edit an image, you might find one there, and then it's going to adjust your settings here. What you could then potentially do is go through and then manually adjust it to find something that greater suits what you're after. So I'm just playing around with it. I might make this a little touch warmer. Down here in effects, this is really fun. So we can play around with the idea of texture. So if you lower the texture, you can sort of see how it softens the image. But if we really bring it up high, it brings out all of that. And we can sort of zoom in and sort of see those changes. So I can bring that down, and I bring that all the way out. Play around with clarity. Becomes really textured, almost too much there. The dehaze. So different sort of things. I could go into these further effects. I'm not going to go that far though. Down here in detail, because the only reason why I'm not going to go that far is this gets a little bit more advanced, but an example of something you might want to play with here is a vignette. And so what that does, that lightens or darkens the edges of your photo. I'm going to put like a soft vignette around it, so it then focuses it back in towards that. If your image has sort of issues with resolution, it's really grainy, what you could also then do is things like super resolution, which then upscales the resolution of your image as well. We can play around with sharpening if we wanted to, but I'm not too stressed with the aspects of that at the moment. What we can also then do down here is lens blur. This is where we can control a sense of depth of field within the image. So where things are in focus across the image, we might want to play around with that. So we're going to apply that by clicking the box here. And what we can now do, you might have just noticed that there. That background, you can see, is far softer. We'll scroll across there. So I will untick that, and you can sort of see the difference there. You can now adjust the blur amount. So how strong that blur is. No worries, mate. So I'm going to have it quite strong. This is the different shapes, but I'm not going to stress that. I'm just looking at the blur amount here. And what you can also then do is this is the focus range. So what this does is this adjusts, if it's between these bars, that means it's staying in focus. If it's outside of it, it's out of focus. So I can adjust this so I can bring nearer into focus. I can make that really narrow if I wanted to. So everything behind the dragon or the line is pretty much. And if I drag it the other way, you can see that it's completely out of focus. If you wanted to get really precise, you could go to visualize depth. If you click on that, it shows you. So the warmer colors, these yellows, are in focus or closer to the front, while the purples and the cooler colors are further away. So I just wanted to make sure that, and you can sort of see it happening. Maybe I want to keep that gate at the top of the screen and that sort of immediate, but I wanted the background. So if I do that and then I untick it, you can sort of see that. I might up that blurring amount. So this Chinese figures up the top is still in focus, but behind that is still out of focus as well, and we've softened that blur. So just some examples of how that can work. What we're going to do next, we'll take a break, and then, we'll have a look at crop. We'll just do that quickly. So what we have here is aspect ratio. So as shot, it's 3:4, which is like it's 3 across the top, 4 along the sides, and that is just a ratio amount. But we can, of course, have different ratios where you can be 1:1, where it's a square, 8.5. You can play around with these sort of things. I would suggest, by and large, we should be using as shot. We shouldn't be coming back down to 1:1 unless there was a really specific reason for doing that. So there's our aspect ratio. We can then flip things around, coming back, but then we've also got these two where I might want to flip it facing the other way like this. What we can also do is these are geometry, these are sort of AI tools which might help us sort of guide it. I'm not going to worry too much about guided upright, and you can sort of see in the sample there where it shows you how we can straighten things up, but I'm just going to do the auto upright where it might just make some small adjustments. And so then it plays around with it. So those are the differences. Those are the basic aspects of crop that I just wanted to adjust. And then you can also here, we can then play around with that even further. So we can move things around and sort of make adjustments. We can then have a control of that if we wanted to. But that's why I wanted to just make you guys aware of that sort of auto upright, how it can help us frame an image. But we can also, once we've done that, we can then control that a little bit further. So for example, if I want to keep those Chinese lettering in, I can do that. Okay, so far we've covered presets, editing, and crop. In our next video, we're going to look at the remove tool and then layer masking.